Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Pesachim, Parak Tes, Chapter 9, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8. Ha-Pesach shenes arib bezvachim, a carbon Pesach that got mixed up with other carbonis, other animals. So you've got an animal designated for a carbon Pesach. You had animals designated as other carbonis, and they got mixed up. You don't know, they got mixed up. You don't know which one is which. Now, the example that's given here is that the animals that were mixed up, one was a carbon Pesach, one was meant to be a carbon Pesach, one was meant to be an asham, a guilt offering, one was meant to be an ola, a burnt offering. And there are different halachas regarding each one. What's most important is the fact that in all these cases, the blood is sprinkled in different ways. They're not all sprinkled the same way. Or thrown, the blood is not applied to the mizbeach, to the altar in the same way. Each one is different. And therefore, because each one is different, you can't just bring them all and say, well, if you're this, be this, and if you're this, you be this, and if you're this, and if it's this, and if this animal is this, it should be this, kind of like bring all three and say, well, whatever it's supposed to be for, that's what it's for. Can't do that because they're done differently. So therefore, you have to find some kind of solution to be able to remedy this problem. So the answer is, Kulan Giru Achistavu, let them all pasture until they all get a blemish, which will invalidate them as a sacrifice. V'yamachru, then you sell them. By selling them, you then transfer the sanctity of each animal onto the money.
Separately?
You sell each one separately, and now you have monies from each one. V'yavi b'demei hayafesh shebehen miminzeh, and now you bring using let me just translate the words. The Yavi, and he's going to bring one type for the value of the most expensive one from one type, and he's going to bring the money of the most expensive one from this type. That means like this. So you've got these three animals, and you mix them up. So the point is that once you go ahead and you transfer the money onto the sanctity. So here, let me read you what it says here. That is, he redeems the animals with his own money and says, the Pesach, whichever animal it may be, is deconsecrated into this coin. Meaning you have these three animals here, right? Now you take money and you say, whichever one of these three is the carbon Pesach, this money.
What, they mix up the money?
They better not, yeah? Okay, it's this money. And whichever one is the Ola is this money. And whichever one is the Asham is this money. Okay? So now he transferred the sanctity from all the animals onto the money, and he's got the money in order. Everything's now everything's is okay. Now you're gonna go in and take the Pesach money to buy a carbon Pesach, or if it's after Pesach already, you're gonna use it to buy a shlamim. The Ola money for an Ola, the Chatos money, the Asham money for an Asham. Now, but the Mishnah says, though, that if the case was where they weren't all the same value, right? One animal was a more expensive animal than the other. So you can't go ahead and so you got to make sure that you transfer it onto the money that it was worth, right? You don't want to go ahead and you're not going to go ahead and take a more expensive animal and redeem it onto lesser money. You're not going to do that. You're not supposed to do that. So, for example, if one of the lambs was worth one selah while the other two were each worth less than a selah, okay. So now, if you're going to go ahead and use less than a selah, what about the lamb that was worth more than a selah? You're not going to be able to transfer the sanctity. You're not going to be able to deconsecrate it. So therefore, what you have to do is you have to redeem each one with the money of the most expensive, right? If you know that one of them was worth a selah, the other one were less than a selah, each redemption you do is going to have to be a selah, because in case what you're doing, in case again you don't know which one was worth what. Okay, you know that one of them was worth more than the other, but you don't know which one. So therefore, in that situation, you're going to have to go ahead and take a selah, take your own money, take 3 salayim, even though two of the animals, let's say, were less than a selah. You're going to have to go ahead, take 3 salayim, and redeem each one on a selah, even though originally the animal may have been less than a selah, but because one of them was worth a selah, you got to make sure that you consecrate it on its value. All right, at least on its value, you got to do it this way. And whatever extra money you have to invest in this comes out of your pocket. You have to take the loss. You mixed it up. You have to go ahead and take the loss of that extra money that's involved in making sure that the redemption is done properly. Okay, so that's the first halach here. First halach here is you had the 3 karbanos. They all got mixed up. You don't know which one is which. Each one has its own way of its blood being applied to the mizbeach, and therefore you can't just bring them and say, if you're this one, it works this way. If you're that one, it should be this. It should be this. If they all work differently, you can't do that. And therefore, you have to redeem them all. And you have to redeem them all on the money value of the one that was most expensive. And then you're going to go, and whatever extra money is involved is going to come out of your pocket. Now we have another case. This arba b'chayris. Let's say the case is not. The original case was we had the carbon pesach we mixed up with zvachim, which means other sacrifices. Mm-hmm. Here the case is this arba b'chayris, that the carbon pesach got mixed up with firstborn animals. So what's the halacha? A firstborn male animal called a bachar of cattle, sheep, and goats is sanctified automatically at birth and must be given to a kohen who brings it as an offering. Okay, so a bachar, that's not blemished. Mm-hmm. It goes to belongs to a kohen. Okay, now the point of this case being different than the other cases is that the way that the blood is applied to the mizbeach by a bachar and the way the blood is applied to the mizbeach by a carbon pesach are exactly the same. Mm. And therefore, you can go ahead, take both these animals, and when you sprinkle the blood, you say, well, if this one is the carbon pesach, it should be the carbon pesach. If this one is the shlamim, it should be for the shlamim. And you do it for the other animal. And you'll take care of everything that way. Seemingly, everything will be fine. But there's still one problem. And the problem is that a carbon pesach can only be eaten one night until midnight. Yeah. A carbon shlamim, you get 2 days and a night in between. So if now I go ahead and I slaughter I take this animal. Let's say this animal was a shlamim, right? Sorry. One of them was a bachar. I'm sorry. Did I say shlamim? A bachar gets 2 days. A bachar gets 2 days and a night, just like shlamim. Now, the problem is though that since I'm concerned that maybe this is a carbon pesach, so that means I am now going to automatically limit the time I can eat the firstborn, because maybe it's the carbon pesach, which means I'm only going to eat it until midnight, and then after that it's going to be nicer. It's going to be left over. I'm not going to touch it, and I have to do that misafik. I have to do that out of doubt on each animal, because maybe each animal is the carbon pesach. I don't know which one is the carbon pesach. I don't know which one is the bachar. That means that now I am taking a bachar and putting it in a situation where the amount of time for eating it is going to be decreased, which creates more potential for leftover meat, which now becomes pasta, which now becomes invalid. You got to burn it. And the question is that okay? Is that okay to do? I have in this case the 2 animals that can be offered the same way, but one of the animals was the bachar. I am now bringing it in a way that I'm decreasing its amount of time to be eaten, which increases the chances of invalidating the meat. So can I do that? So the Mishna says like this: Nis arba b'chayris. If the carbon pesach got mixed up in firstborn animals, Rabbi Shimon says, Im chaburas kohanim yochelu. Now, if we're talking about a chabura of all kohanim, then let him eat it. Because again, carbon pesach, everybody eats.
Everybody eats.
Bachar, only kohanim eat. So if they're all kohanim in this group, so he says, you can bring them both. It's only kohanim are going to eat it. And if it's in each animal, you bring it for whatever it should be. If it should be the carbon pesach, it's the carbon pesach. If it's the bachar, it's the bachar. You are decreasing the amount of time for eating it. Reb Shimon does not consider that a problem. That's Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says that if it's a group of kohanim, you can eat it, means if they're all kohanim, then everybody can eat, no matter what it is. You're limiting the amount of time in case for the bachar. According to Reb Shimon, it's not a problem. The fact that the Mishnah, when it brings in halacha, says Reb Shimon says, that implies that that's Reb Shimon's opinion. Yeah. But that the first time of the Mishnah does not agree with that. And he doesn't agree with that because he holds that it is a problem. It is a problem. The fact that you're now going to be decreasing the amount of time for the bachar to be eaten and you're bringing it, the potential for bringing it to invalidation of the meat is greater, therefore you can't do it. So according to the Tanna Kama, even in this case, when it gets mixed up with the firstborn, you got to do the same thing as you did before. You got to redeem them. You take money and you say, this money is whichever one is the Pesach. This money is whichever one is for the Bechar. Oh, now I know this is the Bechar money. If this is the Bechar money, then I'll go ahead and offer it as a Bechar and eat it in the proper way and with giving me myself the proper time for eating the Bechar. I won't be decreasing its time. So according to the Tanna Kama, whether it gets mixed up with other karbanis, other animals designated for other karbanis, or whether it got mixed up with animals designated for Bechar, at the end of the day, according to the Tanna Kama, which is the halacha, you're going to have to redeem them. You have to actually not just redeem them onto money. You let them pasture until they blemish, then redeem them onto money, and then bring each money for what it's meant to be. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Now the next question.